Brooklyn Independent Television.
Dishwashing detergents, pine oil, mouthwash. You know what these three things have in common? In the curious hands and mouths of a young child, they're all potentially poisonous. From perfumes to pesticides, everyday household items pose a danger to kids. How do you identify the threat in your home? And what do you need to do to keep your child safe? Here with some advice is Dr. Estevan Garcia, the Director of Pediatric Emergency Medicine at Maimonides Medical Center. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
How bad is this problem? How serious a problem is it? You work in the emergency room. Tell me what you see.
We certainly see quite a bit of poisonings in pediatrics. The majority of poisonings occur in children. 80% actually occur in children. Of that, about 70% in kids less than 5 years of age. So this is a real issue for us.
Where do these poisonings happen?
Interestingly, at home, where you would think would be the safest. But they occur at home, the majority in the kitchen, because of what we mentioned earlier, the household supplies.
Now, we said household supplies, but are there any other things other than the household supplies, usually often under the sink, that causes children to be poisoned?
Certainly. The cleaners are one of the biggest issues that we have. Things like oven cleaner, as well as a drain cleaner can cause significant damage to children when they take them. And it only takes a second of leaving something, a cabinet open.
Now, one of the things that we think about is it's in a can, it has a top on it. You know, how can most children 2, 3 years old get that off? Or is there something else that we're doing wrong?
Often these are stored in inappropriate bottles and soda bottles. We see parents sometimes put things from even the garage in a soda bottle that might be an antifreeze or something you might use on your car. So certainly storing them inappropriately. But the other thing is that when we're using them, oftentimes you're using a product, you pour it into a bucket to maybe mop a floor, and you put the product up on the counter. If you leave it alone for a second, a child will get it.
So storing them appropriately is one thing, and not putting them in something that the child thinks to put in their mouth is something else. Are there any other places in the house that children get, other than the kitchen, particularly any other situations that children get in trouble?
Certainly. One of the big areas is bathrooms. So medications, you want to make sure your medications have a child safety cap. The law passed many years ago in the 70s to protect children by tamper-resistant packaging, and also the child safety caps has made a huge difference. But not all medications have child safety caps.
And what about things that are not prescription medications? I find many times people think if it's not a prescription medication, it's not dangerous.
The most common poisoning that we see is actually from a Tylenol or acetaminophen. The Tylenol brand, not necessarily, but acetaminophen causes that. It can be very dangerous and deadly if taken in large doses.
One of the other things I used to see when I was doing primary care is iron pills. Do you see that anymore?
Certainly, especially if someone in the family is pregnant.
Yes.
The prenatal vitamins with the iron are very difficult to treat in children and can poison very quickly.
Now, what about any time of year that may be different since it's in children under 5? Is there any seasonal variation in poisonings for children?
So certainly one of the biggest times we see it is when there are holidays.
Why holidays?
So it's interesting, but grandmother's purse can actually pose a huge danger to kids. Many times grandparents don't understand that their medications won't have a child safety lock on them or a child safety seal. They're very difficult to open. But in the hands of a child, they may look like candy. They'll open it, get into the bag, especially if they're scattered in the purse, and get a hold of them. So holidays, family visits, and changes in normal routine are what put children at risk.
I'm glad you said that. I'm going to visit grandchildren this weekend. So what is it that parents need to know if a child is exposed to a poison? First, before we get to that, what can we do to keep them from being exposed? You mentioned already the safety locks. Are there any things that you can do in the house to keep, or the apartment, to keep kids safe?
Certainly. So one of the big things we need to do is keep drawers, have the locks in the drawers so that children can get into drawers. Same thing for cabinets. You want to make sure the cabinet doors, safety proof all of the cabinets and all of the drawers. That's very important when a new toddler presents into the family. They can crawl into these areas. Also, one of the other things that we do see sometimes are electrical outlets that are uncovered. Very important to do that as well. Not a poison, but a danger in the house. These are the ways to prevent children from getting into these medications.
And the other thing is I always used to think if a child was very quiet and they're up, if they're very quiet and you haven't heard them say a peep for a while, go look and see what they're doing.
They're usually getting into
something that's not good for them.
Absolutely.
Now, in addition to the issues related to medications, which you've already mentioned, and putting them in containers that are not the right ones, what about the fact that mothers sometimes give children things because they don't know? For example, Tylenol is a good one, that the dose that I take is not the dose that you take. That can be poisonous as well. So is that a problem that you see, overdosing on things that they didn't know is poisonous to a child because of the difference in strength and so forth?
Certainly. One of the reasons that we no longer recommend over-the-counter cough medications for children under 6 years of age is because the difference in dosing and how dangerous it can be. And those medications were pulled and are not appropriate for children. Also, pediatric dosing, child dosing, is really weight-based. And if you have a question, you should speak with your doctor about it to make sure we're not overdosing them. Sometimes it can be unintentional, but it's still very dangerous.
Yeah, it's just one of those things that I know from people not turning on the light or giving them adult medications that is also a problem. So if you know your child did something, took something, you walk into the room and they have one of those bottles in their hand and you freeze, what do you do next?
One of the most important things to do is to call poison control. I think it's very important for us to have parents know that they're there 24/7. They speak every language, 150 dialects, I think, and they're there at all hours, and they'll answer any question you have. They can identify the medication based on what the pill looks like, even if you don't know it. If you have another one, you can describe it to them, read the numbers off of it, and they're able to help you. They will guide parents to direct them to call 911 and have an ambulance come pick them up, or potentially just to observe the child at the house and what to look for. So they're really your first call. Even before calling me in the ER, that's who you want to talk to.
Now, what should parents do before they need that number?
So it's really important to have the number every
That's
place.
right.
Thank you. Every place around the house, and what we say is you should have it on every telephone. They have little stickers that have the number. The number is 1-800-222-1222. That's across the United States. In New York specifically, it's 212-POISONS. And that's an easy number for us to remember. And it's the one I use when I call the Poison Center from the hospital.
212-764-7667. Thank you so much for being here and the potential for what you've done today to improve children's safety. Thanks.
Thank you.
Download this program's podcast on iTunes. Keywords Brooklyn Independent Television.